I hope the free thinkers are doing well. And if you're not doing well, I'm happy to remind you that you are the most powerful person that you know. You are the most powerful person that you know because only you can create your reality. My name is KathyLaDonna. Welcome to Soul and Vibration. Saturn is leaving Pisces, or depending on the time you've seen this, it has already left Pisces and entering into the sign of Aries. So this transit will last from May 24th, 2025 until September 2nd, 2026. So when it comes to say Aries and Saturn entering into Aries, I first want to recap and speak on Saturn and Pisces transit. Because if you're familiar with my channel, you've heard me talk about how much that was one of my favorite transits. And as the transit came to an end, I saw why it was one of my favorite transits. And I say that because Pisces energy is such a powerful energy, but it could be one that is so confusing as it comes with deception, manipulation. And the deception can come from others or it can come from ourselves because we're too attached to a thing. So because we're too attached to a thing, we're not able to see things clearly. Because for me, it is through detachment, we're able to discern and see clearly. And with Pisces energy, it's so attached in an emotional way. So wherever you have Pisces in your chart or Neptune in your chart, it could reflect major illusion, delusion, deception, manipulation. And this comes from being so emotionally attached. And from being so emotionally attached, we fill in the blanks for people. We make excuses for people, or we fill in the blanks and make excuses for ourselves and lack taking accountability in things and shifting blame. And from that, we find ourselves caught in a loop. Because for me, wherever I see myself looping and the same things keep happening to me over and over again, I know it's because I'm lacking accountability. I'm not gaining the lesson that needs to be gained from a thing. I'm not seeing my role in how I'm showing up. And my role in how I'm showing up could look like, me becoming clear on my self-worth, me becoming clear on knowing that I'm enough, or my role in it might be I am making excuses for people that don't deserve that. I am filling in the blanks and seeing potential where there isn't none, or I'm choosing to engage in or participate in something that doesn't have my greatest good. But Saturn comes in and brings clarity because it slows things down. And one of the things I love about it transiting Pisces is that Pisces is such a powerful psychic energy. Pisces is a powerful creative energy. I personally feel like Pisces energy plays a big part in us freeing ourselves from this illusion. So it's like the same thing that creates illusion or delusion, which could create pain, is also the same thing that could create freedom. And with Saturn deals with time. Saturn for me is an authoritative energy. Wherever Saturn is in your natal chart would reflect an area in your life where you will probably experience a lot of pain and challenge because it felt like there was slow growth when it comes to this thing. There was a slow build when it comes to this thing. But Saturn energy, eventually, if you stick through and you're willing to learn the lessons that Saturn brings, but also release whatever Saturn is calling you to let go with the demolition energy that it brings, then you could become an expert in a certain area because Saturn has been helping you to pretty much build muscle in that area. So you eventually become some form of expert. And with Saturn transiting Pisces, to me, Saturn slowed things down so much to the point that some of us were able to become clear of ways we were escaping reality and distracting ourselves, causing us to be stuck in this endless loop where it's like we have this idea and before you know it, we think we're about to start on this thing, but we're caught up because our distractions would say maybe it's drinking, it's smoking, it's eating, it's entertainment, however one escapes reality. Saturn was able to help some of us see certain habits that we have that maybe we didn't own it as a habit. We might thought, oh, this is just a little treat, or this is how I reward myself, even though there's nothing to really reward because we're not making any progress. To me, Saturn slowed things down so much to where we were able to see how we're getting in our own way. We were able to see how we lie to ourselves, deceive ourselves through filling in the blanks when it comes to certain things, or not taking accountability when it comes to other things. Saturn helped us in Pisces to see how we can materialize our dreams, how we could implement steps to get from point A to B, how a dream can become a reality. Because Pisces energy is that dream. But when I think of Pisces energy and Neptune energy, I think of like my oil lamp, where it's like things are just morphing from one thing to the next. But when I look at the glass that holds my oil lamp together, that's like Saturn creating structure, holding something together that normally would have no boundaries. So Saturn brings in boundaries in a place where there was no boundaries. So look at your chart and see where Pisces is for you, what house it's in. You know, wherever Pisces were for you, there was no boundaries when it comes to that thing. And you were able to see the lack of boundaries, implement boundaries, and take your power back. So that was one of my favorite transits. So for me, with Pisces leaving, with Saturn leaving Pisces, whatever house it left in your chart, there was a major completion, whether it came forward in a painful way or not, but something came to an end, something shifted so that something real can grow there. You were able to see the truth in how you were showing up in a space that was filled with fog and confusion. Clarity came in and you became an authority over that thing. So I think of like, say a person, maybe Saturn was transiting the area of their life that deals with relationships, and now Saturn has left Pisces. I bet that person will never find themselves in a relationship or a connection again where they're just allowing for people to crumb them along, where they're filling in the blanks and making excuses for people. You know, wherever Pisces is in your chart, you'll find yourself no longer filling in the blanks, making excuses and justifying bad behavior. Instead, you could find yourself, you know, being clear on your worth and implementing boundaries in that area that Saturn left, wherever Pisces is in your chart. So great things came from Saturn transiting Pisces. And I mean, I could go on and on with other things, but I think it was like around the 2020 lockdown when Saturn was transiting Capricorn. And look how many people's lives changed in a major way where career is concerned. So many people became the authority of their own life when it comes to their career because they were told they weren't essential. So they made themselves essential by creating something for themselves. When it went through Aquarius, you know, certain friend groups or people we associate ourselves with shifted. Pisces, you know, clarity came in an area where there was confusion, where there was a lot of confusion and pain. Because of the confusion, things became so much more clear. People started to be able to trust themselves in that area where Pisces is because of Saturn or before Saturn. You know, some people might feel like I can't trust myself around this thing. So I also want to think about or speak on how we're in a 9 universal year. So being in a 9 universal year means we add the year 2025 together and it adds up and reduces to a number 9 frequency. And I feel like that is powerful and shouldn't be overlooked. And the fact that Saturn is entering into Aries while we're, you know, somewhat in the middle, almost in the middle of this 9 universal year. And for the most of 2026, or more than half of 2026, most of 2026, Saturn will be in Aries still, getting ready to move out in September. So when I think of being in a 9 universal year and a 1 universal year, and I think of this Saturn energy, when I think of the number 9, I think of a circle, because the number 9 reflects the ending, but the ending is the beginning when you're looking at a circle. So when I look at Saturn entering into Aries in a 9 universal year, for me, this reflects major beginnings and endings in our lives. And even Saturn leaving Pisces in this 9 universal year. Like wherever Saturn left, whatever house Saturn was in in your sign when it was in Pisces. That area of your life probably experienced such an ending that is probably a lot for some people to like reflect on, like, wow, I can't believe this thing has come to an end. Because when I think of us being in a 9 universal year, I think of how it took a buildup to get to this point. It's like being in a career for 9 years, in a relationship for 9 years, and coming to a point where we decide, do we work things out and evolve to the next level of this connection, or do we cut ties and walk away? And Saturn transiting Pisces and creating clarity around an area where there was confusion. Some people could cut ties with major things, causing like a huge life upgrade because of what they were able to cut ties with. Maybe something was like the devil. I think of the devil card in the tarot and how people are chained to this thing. And I think of how, well, you know, with the devil card, people voluntarily chain themselves to a thing. But then when you bring Neptune and Pisces energy in it, people can't see how they voluntarily chain themselves to a thing. So they're voluntarily chained to a thing, but they're unaware of it because there's so much confusion. Things aren't clear. So when we move into, say, Saturn in Aries, like I said, Saturn is father time. Saturn is that coach, and it's the coach that doesn't give a F about your feelings. And I love Saturn. I am a daughter of Saturn. I'm all about Saturn energy. Because for me, I like to be free. I like to be the boss of my own world. I like to be the boss of my own world. There's a boss within me, so I don't need a boss outside of me. And Saturn helps me to build the muscle that is required in order to step in the position of that boss within me. Because wherever Saturn is, it will challenge you. And it will challenge you so much where it's either you give in and you throw in the towel and live in a lifetime of misery in that thing. You know, I think of the person who has accepted someone else being their master, something else being their master. And it's like, resent the fact that you have a master, but also resent yourself for not being your own master. I don't want that. That sounds like a despicable existence. But where Saturn comes in, Saturn challenges you, and you're going to cry because it's painful, because growth is painful. But if you are willing to see what Saturn is willing to show you and then act on it, then you become the authority of your own world. Because think of wherever Saturn is in your chart. Wherever Saturn is in your chart, you've been challenged in a major way with this thing. Because more than likely, the way you were taught to see this thing in your chart where Saturn is in your chart, you came into the world and was conditioned to see things in a certain way. Where instead, Saturn wants to encourage you to see it in your own way, to be authentic, to take your power back when it comes to that thing, to be your own boss when it comes to that thing, and not do or be how other people think you should be, but what is your truth. So I see how Saturn could be misunderstood in that way, where there is an aspect of Saturn that deals with tradition and the past. But I see Saturn as a tradition breaker, where now it starts with you, and you got to decide what that is. And whatever it is, you have to be authentic to you when it comes to that thing. Because whenever Saturn comes into a certain area of your life, like, you're forced to be honest and authentic, very similar to Plutonian energy. Saturn and Pluto, to me, kind of operate similarly, except Saturn moves faster. And yes, Pluto deals with death and rebirth, but Saturn brings in the death and rebirth also. And both kind of leaves you being authentic and being the boss. They're different, but they have a lot of similarities in that way. So with Saturn entering into Aries, and this is universal energy, collective energy. So with Saturn entering into Aries collectively, you know, this could encourage us all to be clear on who we are, be clear on our ambition, and have the courage to take action when it's all said and done. Where when Saturn was in Pisces, you know, I think of, say, before, some of us had certain dreams to do certain things, but we couldn't see how we would be able to monetize those things. We couldn't see how we could do those things for a living. And Saturn slowed things down and showed us that. Now it comes into Aries Some of us might not be able to see ourselves in a certain role. Some of us might not be able to see ourselves as the main character in our own reality. And to me, Saturn is like Morpheus, helping you to realize that you're the one. You're the one. So for me, Saturn and Aries, yeah, I like that. Saturn and Aries, boom, if you've seen The Matrix, if you haven't, you need to see it. So Saturn and Aries is like, yeah, Morpheus helping Neo to realize that he is the one. And with it happening in a 9 universal year and extending into a 1 universal year, because when we get to 2026 adds up and reduces to number 1 vibration. So in a 9 year, for some people, they're waking up to the truth of who they are, waking up to the truth that they're the one, they're the main character in their world. And this could look like some people walking away from certain things because they now have the courage to. And then entering into a 1 universal year when we get to 2026, starting new beginnings that they would have never even imagined. They would have never even saw themselves in that position. And what plays into this is that Neptune is in Aries. Neptune is that dreamy energy. Neptune rules Pisces. And Neptune energy can be deceiving, like I've mentioned already, speaking on Pisces energy. And if you haven't seen my video about Neptune and Aries, it's more of an audio. Maybe you could check that out. But Neptune will come with its deception when it goes into Aries, in the sense that I could see how, like I've spoken in the audio, Neptune and Aries energy. And I'll try to link that below this video so you could check it out if you hadn't, because the way how I created that video, I first posted it on Patreon and then I shared it here. I didn't fully post it here, so it didn't really go live here the way how most videos do. So you probably didn't even get to check it out. But when I think of, say, the Aries, Neptune and Aries generation, I could see how that could reflect a generation that will be isolating. People are off to themselves in their own imagination. I could see how Neptune energy could bring in escapist type behaviors. I could also see how Neptune energy can bring in spirituality and being creative, people stepping into their Christ consciousness, stepping into Christ consciousness energy with, say, Neptune and Aries. It's like waking up out of the dream, waking up within the dream, but out of the dream by waking up within it and going through it. With Neptune and Aries, I think of the way out is the way in, but Neptune is also a dreamer. So with Neptune and Aries energy, I could see how some of us could finally be able to dream the dream an impossible dream, and visualize ourselves in ways that are just out of this world. When I think of Neptune and Aries, it would remind me of how, say, younger generations, you'll see videos of like 18-year-olds easily making millions of dollars like it's nothing, because they're not restricted by the old ways of thinking. They're able to visualize, because Neptune, the dreamy energy, they're able to visualize and see themselves in powerful ways. And to me, those are some of the powerful things about Neptune and Aries. But when Saturn conjuncts Neptune in Aries, I feel like for the year and change of this conjunction is a really beneficial one, because some of the work that Saturn did while it was in Pisces, it will continue to do so with Neptune energy, because Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. Yes, Jupiter, I consider Jupiter also the ruler of Pisces. And Jupiter deals with spirituality. It could deal with religion. It's philosophical. It's expansive. It's optimistic. So optimistic that it could be delusional, like how Neptune brings in delusion. But Jupiter energy does play a part. And I think of, how we could be so, I think of with, say, Jupiter energy, how, we're so optimistic to the point that we're unrealistic. And optimistic to unrealistic, I feel like it depends on what though. I feel like a person could never be too optimistic when it comes to their dreams. I feel like a person could never be too optimistic when it comes to the way they're seeing themselves in the world. I feel like the whole optimistic and unrealistic aspect comes in when it comes to us making excuses for people or filling in the blanks when it comes to others. I feel like that's when that could get problematic. Or I think of unrealistic as, say, the person who is pretty much going against whatever it is that they say they want, but they feel like being optimistic is enough when faith without works is dead. And Saturn, in Pisces was able to create that space for a person to see how they can put the work in. But with Neptune conjunct Saturn, Saturn continues to do the work it was doing in Pisces, where with Neptune and Aries, we're optimistic about ourselves and seeing ourselves in the world in the most powerful ways. And Saturn comes in again and slows down the fog, the confusion, and shows us how we could go about making a thing happen. Oh, you see yourself as this main character and you're doing XYZ. Saturn comes in, slows things down, and shows you how to go about doing it. Say you are building sandcastles on the beach. Just giving an example, you're building sandcastles on the beach, and the castles that you're building, they're not being built properly because you're not taking in consideration the waves coming in and things of that nature. So Saturn is the wave that will knock your castles down until you learn how to build something that's sustainable. And I think of with Neptune conjunct Saturn, we have these ideas for ourselves and we're seeing ourselves in the world, and Saturn helps us to build the kind of character, to become the kind of person that can outlast, that can outlive, that won't be destroyed by our own dreams. Those are some things I see when it comes to the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, where Neptune brings in deception and illusion and brings in confusion, and Saturn gets rid of that. Saturn helps to clear that up. So for the year and change, while Saturn conjuncts Neptune, I feel like that's a good introduction for Neptune and Aries energy, because we're able to be dreamy, but we're able to see all the ways how we could strategize, structure ourselves and build something lasting. Let's pause for a bit. I am proud of the services that I offer and excited to tell you about them. If it would be your first time booking with me, then I recommend the natal chart and numerology awareness coaching session. For a while, that was the only service I offered, along with the 30-minute tarot reading, which is still available if you're interested. I noticed a pattern. At the end of the natal chart and numerology coaching sessions, some of you would ask me for a follow-up service options for additional clarity and guidance to assist you with whatever you're going through at the moment. I kept saying, I'll look into it. I don't know why it took me so long. Finally, I have created that option along with the service option to book a solar return chart reading for those of you who are strategic and like to plan ahead. Everything you need to know is within the description box below. Let's get back into the video. So for me, Saturn and Aries makes me think of, I said it, when Neo meets Morpheus. Like Neo needed Morpheus to help, to remind him that he is the one. And I think of when I'm watching The Matrix and Morpheus is teaching Neo how to own his power, how to, stand in his truth. That's Saturn. And it's going to be painful. And I think of the scene in The Matrix when Morpheus explains what the Matrix is and Neo panics and kind of wanted out. I feel like that's going to be the pain that we experience as Saturn is breaking us down in different ways, because again, Aries energy deals with our will, our ambition, being able to take action, how we want to be seen. I feel like with Saturn energy there, for some of us, some things could come up a big time around our insecurities around being seen. Maybe insecurities that came up in the past and why we justify why we don't want to be seen or why we don't put ourselves out there. And I feel like Saturn is going to help us to become aware of all of that and then in some way transmute all of that energy. And, the last thing I want to share is the blessings from this Saturn and Aries energy. And I feel like the blessing is waking up to the fact that you're the main character, waking up to the fact that you are the main character in your reality. Like you are your hero. You are your hero. And that's why I say you're the most powerful person that you know, because only you can create your reality. And when Saturn is done with this transit, You will wake up to the fact that you are the main character in your reality if you didn't know that. And if you always wanted to be the main character in your reality, Saturn will show you how if you don't run away from the work. This video was part 1 of Saturn and Aries. Part 2 is available on Patreon. It was a pleasure sharing this message with you, and I would love to hear from you, and you could do so by dropping me a white heart in the comment box below. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.